Morning guys, Andrea here from AC Podiatry. How are you? Tuesday morning and here we are again. So today, what do we want to talk about? Today we want to talk about a muscle group called the hip flexor muscle group, okay? The hip muscle flexor group, basically the hip flexor muscle group sits here on the front of the hip, and basically what it does is flex the hip. Now, for most of us, this muscle group is generally what we term overactive. So we've spoken a lot about how a lot of us don't use our glutes and we don't use our bum. And the thing about that is if we don't use our bum, if we don't use our glute, what tends to happen is because the glute pulls our bum back, the pelvis will tilt forward. And as a result of tilting forward, what you can do is as it drops forward, it shortens our hip flexor, okay? The other thing is, for a lot of us, we spend our time sitting down, okay? So kids at school, office jobs, for me, in my role at work, most of us we're sedentary, so we're sitting down on computers doing all this kind of thing, okay? And if we're seated, what position is our hip? It's flexed, okay? So we get this overactivity, we get this shortening of our hip flexor. Now, why is that a problem with regards to walking and moving? Well, I've already spoken about how it can bring your pelvis forward. But think about it. In order to walk, what we want to do is we want to effectively extend the hip. We want to bring our hip back to enable normal function. And that's the same with running, okay? Now, if we're very tight through our hip flexor on account of not having used our glutes, and so we use this muscle to pull our leg up and put it in front rather than extending the hip, that will tighten up and that will really restrict our capacity to extend the hip and move and function properly. We see a lot in clinic. A lot of people just literally don't have that range through the hip because the muscle is in effect overactive or shortened. So how do we check that it is a shortened muscle group, and then what do we do once we get it done? I'm going to show you today how to test it, okay? This is a very simple test, it's called a Thomas test, okay? So basically, I'll get into position. We sit here on the end of a couch or bench, okay? I grab my knee and I'll grab my right one, okay, with both hands as I bring it to my chest and I rock backwards, okay? Now, if your hip flexor is not tight, this leg will sit flat on the supporting surface. So you can see that my hip flexor is tight, okay? I've got tight pants on too, my chino's a little tight, but it does stop me from getting down. So I know that I've got hip flexor tightness, and again, my right one will be worse because I'm a soccer player, so my right leg, the one responsible for kicking, is tighter again, okay? And you can see how far that is away from the ground, okay? So I do a fair degree of work trying to stretch and release my hip flexor. So the question is, once I've determined that it's tight, what do I do about stretching it, okay? Now there are a couple of stretches we recommend. I'm going to do it up on the plinth, but you can generally do this flat on the ground, okay? Call a rifleman, all right? So up here like so, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, okay? Keeping my body tall as I've got a piece of string pulling my head straight up, my body's nice and tall, and what I'm effectively doing through here is pushing my bum forward and opening the front of my hip, okay? I'm feeling a really nice stretch in through this particular area, okay? Now what we don't want is arching, we don't want leaning forward, okay? You want to be nice and straight, you want to be pushing from the bum and really stretching the hip flexor. Now if you've got someone who can't get down to the ground, a little bit older or something like that, you can cheat a little bit, use a chair or something like so, put this up on the chair. Now that's quite high, my plinth, I wouldn't expect it to go that high. And again, keeping the body tall with that slight bend and just lean forward and stretch through the hip, okay? The hip flexor is different to the quadricep, so it does require a slightly different stretch, okay? So hopefully what I've shown you guys today is the importance of the hip flexor, why it is important, why you need to stretch it, okay? It's critically important, okay? The second thing is how to test if it is tight or not. Very simple way of doing it. You can do it on even a bed, not ideal because it's not hard, but you can do it on a bed to kind of get a gauge on how tight it is. And then a very simple exercise to help release it. And with regards to those stretching, don't static stretch before, okay? We know static stretching before activity will actually reduce performance, but after your game, after training, after you've gone to the gym is a really good time to do some static stretching, okay? You want to hold those stretches for about 20 seconds, making sure you're able to breathe, never stretch to pain. Thanks, Christy. Really making sure that we're stretching properly, and you know, do that 2-3 times a day and you'll get that range. And in conjunction with a glute strengthening stuff we've been speaking about over the last 4 or 5 weeks, you're really going to help that hip function. You're going to really help your gait and mechanics, and overall it's going to protect not only you from injury, but improve performance as well. As always, guys, love spreading the word. If there's anything specifically you'd want to talk to me about, or you want me to talk to you about, or you've got any questions, please don't hesitate. Pop it down below, share the video, like the video, get the word out there. You know we're here to help you guys reach your full potential. Help us do that and everybody else. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Alrighty, bye.